Good evening and welcome to the Canadian Football Fanatics. We are coming at you guys live tonight for a BC Lions post-game recap after the BC Lions just defeated the Montreal Alouettes by a 37-23 score here tonight in Montreal. Impressive win for the BC Lions. Another post-game show. Blake and I weren't able to do a quite as long one as maybe we're going to do here tonight last week, but another victory post-game recap. These make it much more easier to do when the Lions are able to get victories. So I'm excited to talk about this one. A lot to talk to. I tweeted it out there at halftime. The Lions, um, you know, very tough to kind of word this. Promising first half. They get out to the early lead there early on. 10-0, I believe, was what they jumped out to. I believe it ended up being 17 to 13 there at halftime, but could have been much more. I think it was a little bit closer. The score was a little bit closer than the game felt. The Lions were dictating most of the play in the first half, but 3 first half turnovers, I think, made it much closer than it needed to be. Kept Montreal hanging around in that game and made it a little bit more sticky than it needed to be. I think if the Lions were able to execute a little bit better on offense on those 3 possessions, I think this game might have been an even more lopsided win for the Lions. So before we get into it, unfortunately, Blake's not able to join me here tonight. I know he's at his New West High game here tonight. I believe their home opener there in New West. So hope Blake's having a good time. I know he was actually unable to catch the game as well. So hopefully he's in for a pleasant surprise when he's been checking his phone here, getting some updates, I would imagine, and seeing that the BC Lions got the big victory here tonight. So super excited to get into it, guys. Before we get into it, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you guys aren't subscribed, subscribe. When you guys subscribe, hit the little notification bell. You guys will get notified every time any of us go live for any sort of shows. The weekly show, BC Lions post-game recaps, the Canada West show that we're doing now as well. So a ton of content here weekly, 3 to 4 shows every week. So make sure you guys are subscribed and have the notifications turned on as well. And let us know where you guys are tuning into from tonight. And let us know maybe what you guys enjoyed, what your guys' thoughts are. Maybe you're a Montreal fan tuning in the comments below. I'll have to read them afterwards as well. So let's get into it. As always, do a little bit of a game recap, kind of go quarter by quarter, somewhat of drive by drive, some of the more important drives I like to talk about. But like I mentioned, the Lions were able to get out to a quick start. And Nathan looked pretty crisp early on, getting the ball out of his hands, and was able to convert on 2 second and mediums early on there that kind of showed he was in rhythm. The second one more specifically, where he started looking to the left side of the field, quickly flipped his hips back to the right side of the field, was able to hit Javon Couture in the flats, pick up a first down. Just kind of told me right away he was processing things quickly and seeing the field really well. So he was able to build on that, continuing to drive on down the field. William Stanback was able to be effective once again. I'm sure we'll get into his numbers later in the show. But he was able to be effective early on when his number was called upon. Not too often on that first drive, but I believe the Lions were able to get down into Montreal territory when the first long quarterback sneak that I'd love to hear if anybody else that's maybe tuning in has seen a quarterback sneak of longer than 15 yards, which we will get into the second one. But I believe this one was 23 yards for David Mackey on the first drive of the game. Lions in 2nd and 1. David Mackey comes in the short yard situation, is able to take it on the right side of the offense. And Paul LaPolice was able to mention on the broadcast that Montreal was kind of not lined up properly, didn't have some enough numbers to the right side. I guess their left side or right side of the offense. And David Mackey, once he broke around that edge, really wasn't contested and was able to run it in for a touchdown. And just really started off the Lions on the right foot. Was a very, I think, kind of meant business for anybody that was, maybe on the Montreal sideline and stuff like that. I think they kind of realized, oh, okay, we gotta kind of bring it today. The BC Lions are here to play and here to get a victory. And I think that was what I was looking for them to bring to be the more desperate team, if that's what you want to call it, coming into this one, needing a victory more than Montreal. Why I kind of picked Montreal there in the weekly during our weekly show here is, why I picked BC is, I just figured nothing against Montreal. They're a great team, but I think it was kind of their turn for a loss. They were due for one of these losses. So um, felt pretty confident in BC going in. I think this even kind of backed it up even more that they got out to the fast start. It kind of picked up where they left off a little bit from Touchdown Pacific offensively, even defensively in that first half. I think they battled considering three first half turnovers that gave Montreal possession of the football with good field position. So Lions were able to jump out to 7-0 lead, and I'm glad we're able to talk about this guy next. Defensively, the BC Lions defense was able to go on the field. Their first possession of the game. Montreal is getting a little bit of some traction going on there early on. They get around midfield area, and Christian Covington once again. I tweeted this during the game as well. Has been starting to become a little bit of a difference maker here in the last month or so of the season. Three games at least, maybe pushing four as well, where he now is up to 5 sacks on the season, tied with the CFL sack leaders, up there with Micah Johnson, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't know who's the other one that's tied for. I believe there's three of them up there with 5 sacks on the season. So has been quietly having a good, middle part of the season here for the BC Lions. It took him a little bit of time to get up to speed. A guy that I was super critical of early on in the season, wanted to see a little bit more from him, maybe a little bit unrealistic, kind of like the Nathan Rourke expectations as well. But to kind of see him start to turn it on here now. He mentioned, I believe when he spoke to the media in Touchdown Pacific, that he really didn't understand that the speed of this game and the skill level, the talent level in this league would be to the level that it is coming in. So I think it was a little bit of maybe a shell shock to him as well coming into the CFL, and he was able to start to the game was slowing down a little bit for him, starting to see things a little bit more, being used to a little bit more things as well, knowing kind of what's coming at him, and I think it's been starting to pay off for him. So huge sack there early on in the first possession, was able to kind of snuff out any traction that the Montreal Alouettes were building early on in that first possession, set them back into 2nd and 18. The Lions were able to get I believe it was kind of a check down, rally, and tackle. Montreal, it was maybe getting 10 yards and was punting on 3rd and I believe 5 or something like that. And BC was able to capitalize once again. Or I guess actually, excuse me, capitalize once again. This was the first of the three first half interceptions, with Nathan Rourke throwing an interception intended to Justin McInnis. I mentioned this as well throughout the game, that I thought it was kind of a tough one to judge of, I hate to say kind of, whose fault it was, or maybe who has more of the blame. I think that one is probably about 50-50. Nathan was extending the play, broke out of the pocket to the right. McInnis was able to kind of break off his route, come open for Nathan. And I think from Nathan's perspective, you probably don't need to put as much, pepper on the ball. He really, I think, probably almost sometimes not knowing how hard he throws it. I think of one specifically. I don't know if we'll talk about it, but one to Alex Hollins in the game where he was on the sideline, was able to get a first down on it, but really gunned it in there. Alex Hollins had to kind of brace himself and catch it with his body instead of his hands, because I think of how hot it was coming in there. I think this was another one that kind of got on McInnis super fast. But at the end of the day, it was a super catchable, not a super catchable, but it was a reasonably catchable ball. It was, slightly above his head. I believe he had to leave his feet, but we've seen McInnis, he made a tougher catch, contested catch there on the first drive of the game, the previous drive. So a ball that we've seen McInnis come down with, but went through his hands, kind of deflected up in the air, and Montreal came down with their first interception of the year. So was interesting to see, but the like I mentioned, the defense was able to kind of continue to hold them in, continue to battle, hold them to field goals if Montreal had some good field position, and was a pleasant surprise to see. So as we continue on here, Montreal was able to get a little bit going on, but ended up punting. And this third drive for the BC Lions was the Alex Hollins drive, which has been nice to see Alex Hollins kind of get back in rhythm here the last few weeks. Um, getting kind of off his little bit of a schneid, if you want to call it that, throughout the last month or so of the season. A lot of drops, uncharacteristically. Um, he was able to, I think, 3 or 4 catches on this drive, and might have been actually 3 catches with this one. Would have been the fourth. Was running down the field, middle of the field on a post pattern. Was had beaten his defender Antoine Duquois, and Duquois had to pass interference and gave BC a nice field position, and BC was able to capitalize with a field goal from Sean White once again, making it 10-0 after the first quarter. And Nathan Rourke, had looked comfortable from that point. I believe it had been eight of nine after the first quarter, over 100 yards, an interception, obviously, but no balls had hit the ground quite yet. Obviously, the 8 of 9, the one incompletion would have been the interception. So when it wasn't the right intended target, but a target did come down with the ball. So I believe up until maybe 15, 16 attempts, and obviously there was another interception in there that we'll get to here shortly, but there wasn't a ball that hit the ground. I think Nathan got up to 13 of 15, if I'm not mistaken, on the night. So I'd been really dialed in for the most part, and had been going to the right read, and been getting the ball to the right option and stuff like that, and been spreading it around to all of his receivers. Catcher had a quiet night, but he was able to be involved there early on. I had a few catches, one contested one that was nice. Hollins, like I mentioned, this drive was a little bit more, featured him. McInnes there early on had some big catches, and then Katoy had some big time receptions as well throughout the game. So BC was able to take a 10-0 lead after the first quarter, and the Owls got on the scoreboard there in the second quarter, kicking their first field goal of the game, 10-3. And like I mentioned, the Lions defense I thought was playing well. Montreal is playing a little bit shorthanded. No Austin Mack, no Tyson Philpott, but I thought they did a pretty good job that containing Walter Fletcher, not letting too many guys get going. Cole Speaker had himself a pretty good night, but they kept him under wraps for the most part as well. There was I believe number 80 for Montreal as well. I'm not sure. I can't remember his name right now. It's blanking right now, but he it felt like he was kind of showing up from time to time for Montreal, and was a nice added weapon for them tonight, with some of their guys get down. So Montreal, as I mentioned, was able to get on the board in the second quarter for the first time with a field goal. BC took over possession for their fourth time for the first time in the second quarter, and this was the second interception of the game by Nathan Rourke, another tipped interception. Another one I think Nathan could have took some off of it. I think it got on William Stanback quite fast. William Stanback could have, I believe Lapo mentioned in the replay of it, they were in, I believe, quads to the right. William Stanback being a running back, Lapo kind of alluded to potentially, him not being around as quick because, I honestly think William Stanback's quite a good pass catching back for a running back. But, maybe if that's a receiver, he gets around a little bit more smoother, quicker, and is able to, get hauling that pass. And that being said, we saw Justin McInnes with a tip pass with the ball just getting on him a little too fast. So I'm not going to fault, stand back too much. I think that the next one that we'll talk about, the next turnover we'll talk about, that one, it was a tough one for Stanback for sure. Although, there was maybe no clear replay of overturning that one that we'll get into. We won't jump ahead, but Stanback, the ball comes to him on a little hook pattern out of the backfield, and it bounces off his kind of left shoulder, kind of off his hands as well, bounces up into the air, and Montreal comes down with their second interception of the first half, and was another one that was, at the time felt like it was going to be super costly. It felt like, this is going to be, Montreal, capitalizing on some mistakes by the BC Lions, that the Lions were playing well, but just weren't able to, do enough and keep, take care of the ball, so that they were giving Montreal extra possessions, stuff like that. So it was definitely interesting to see how the BC Lions were going to respond. But like I was just mentioning, I thought the defense did a good job of, when they got put in those situations, quick changes on the fly and stuff like that, where you just come out, sudden changes is the word I'm looking for, where you just come off the field and you're looking, and you just come off the field, and next thing you know, there's a turnover, whatever it may be. Later in the game, there was an onside kick where you have to go right back on and kind of adjust on the fly and really get ready to play. I think BC did a good job of that defensively here tonight to, roll with the punches, whatever it may be. If they had to go back right on the field, they dug in, they, kind of had their lunch pail and hard hat mentality and really played well tonight. I thought 23 points. Considering I think the Lions ended up with 4 turnovers is honestly I think pretty fine in my book. Very satisfied with the defense's performance here tonight. So, um, as I mentioned on previous weeks of the Lions throughout the losing streak, lack of complementary football. I thought they played a good amount of complementary football there in the first half. They get their second interception of the game, and Matthew Betts was able to go out there and get a sack. I think that the first defensive possession there as we go back here. Covington's able to kind of build on that first touchdown drive, able to get a sack right away. So the complementary football I think was very good here tonight for both teams. As I was just mentioning, Matthew Betts able to get a sack after the second Rourke interception. And after that sack, it kind of stalled things for Montreal once again. Was able to hold them to a field goal one play after that Matthew Betts sack. So, instead of a 10-10 ball game, it's 10-6 there early on where it could have been a tie game. So, what was super nice. But as I go into the chat here, I see a few people that are tuning in here. Kevin, I appreciate you. Q-Man, as always, Q-Man, quite a regular, usually on the post game shows and stuff like that. But Kevin says that was called determination. Need to stop the second down defensive penalties that are extending the drives. Absolutely. There's been a few costly penalties here throughout the last 6 weeks, I'd say, or so. So I think defensively it's been up to not up to standards. So I think there's another level for this defense to go, but satisfactory. But I think the biggest probably gripe now is getting rid of some of those costly penalties, as Kevin's mentioning here, that have been hurting them, extending drives, and hopefully they can get that cleaned up for some big time football here down the stretch. So Q-Man also says we play like this the rest of the year, we win Grey Cup, 4 turnovers, still win. Did we punt? Um, that's actually interesting. Did we punt? Let me check here. I believe must have punted. Excuse me, folks. Yeah, so actually, Human, you're not far off though. We only had one punt on the evening, and Montreal was only able to muster 12 yards on that punt. So, pretty good night of the offense for offensively. Something that I didn't even realize, and something that's nice of you to point out, Human. So, good on you by seeing that. Just I think adds to the night that the offense had as well on the evening. So I'm going to write that down, a keynote I think on this game. So let's continue to get into a little bit of a game recap here, folks. Betts was able to get a sack. Montreal kicks a field goal to get to 10-6. Just excuse me for 1 second. It's a little bit of a dry throat. Let me grab a drink here quickly. And PC was able to drive for their second touchdown after this. And a throw that jumped out to me was a 2nd and 16, I believe. Nathan Rourke was brought down on the play, the first down, 2nd and 16. Nathan kind of steps up in the pocket, slides to the left, escapes the pocket to the left, and is able to find Aiden Eberhardt down the field and convert on 2nd and 16 for I believe 20 or probably a 20-25 yard gain down the field. A few plays later, Nathan was able to find Eberhardt once again for a 15-yard touchdown. And, at that point, it kind of felt like, what, Nathan's making some good throws. He's really feeling himself in the pocket. Yeah, he has 2 interceptions, but, he feels back to me and kind of gave me the confidence at that point that, as long as nothing crazy happens, which some crazy stuff was happening, but as long as nothing crazy happened, it felt like we were going to win that game at that point. Nathan was really playing well. As I look down here at that point, after that touchdown pass, I believe that had been their fourth offensive possession. Nathan was 12 of 15, 169 for one touchdown, the 2 interceptions. But I think, excuse me, tough one. Um, Tough one to kind of put into words, but I think really team interceptions. You kind of can't really chalk up or blame one person on both those interceptions. So I think he'd been playing pretty fine up to that point. And like I mentioned, gave him a ton of confidence in me for the rest of the game. As I mentioned, yeah, Q-Man puts in the chat here as well. I mentioned this earlier, Q-Man, maybe before you tuned in, but Nathan spread the ball around, and it was nice to see. Hatcher even had a catch. I know he was quiet, but Hatcher had a nice contested catch there early on, gave him some confidence where he was able to kind of have a little bit of swagger, show himself after that catch. Katoya, as you mentioned here, Eberhardt, McInnes had a few as well, big time first down catches. So spreading the ball around, which Nathan Work does as well. So um, Eberhardt, Stanback, and Katoya are involved. I think he's continuing on. Nathan spreads, yeah, so he's continuing on here, Q-Man, actually. So he says Nathan spreads the ball around. Eberhardt, Stanback, and Katoya are involved in the offense now versus VA, who is so slot back focused. Yeah. Very well said. Another good observation by you there, Q-Man. I think just what makes Nathan Work a little bit dangerous. I don't want to get into the politics. We're not going to divide the fan base, divide the locker room. I think they've done a good job at not doing that. So I'm going to try my best not to do that as well. But I totally agree with you to get end the conversation there. So BC was able to go up 17-6 after the Eberhardt touchdown. Owls got the ball back once again and were able to the Lions defense was able to get a stop after that and force another Alouettes punt. Lions were able to take over, and for the third time in the half, William Stanback was having a nice run off the offense's right side of the field, and had been kind of brought down. The whistle hadn't been down or hadn't been gone yet, and there. So I believe the official ruling on the field was he was down by contact, and they went into the Jason Moss challenged the play. They went to booth review, and it was ruled that he wasn't down by contact, and that the ball was out before he hit the ground. So I know there was one replay that kind of looked close. I would say there was no conclusive evidence, so I too was a little bit puzzled. I wasn't maybe as frustrated as some that were voicing their opinion online, but um, I think a close call that if you whatever you ruled on the field, I think you got to go with. At that point, if you didn't rule it was a fumble, I think you got to stick with the down by contact. Ultimately, they go the other way, so stuff happens. But tough break for BC to have turnover number 3 of the half, turnover number 1.5, if you want to call it that, for William Stanback, where he has the fumble and the interception, kind of somewhat credited to him. So tough one for William Stanback to start, who I know was really fired up to play in Montreal once again. I know was very motivated. Felt a little bit slighted by them in some sort of way by getting the kind of the boot, if that's what you want to call, and was you know, cool because the response from, the BC Lions from the turnovers and William Stanback, number one, who we'll talk about William Stanback here in a little bit, but William Stanback had himself another phenomenal night running the ball and was able to be effective for the BC Lions outside of, maybe 2 snaps all night. So William Stanback continues to be a big time addition, biggest addition of the BC Lions offseason last year's bar none. So William Stanback turnover, the Alouettes drive for a touchdown, and this is where it felt a little bit shaky. They scored on I believe it was basically the last play of the half. Is what it felt like. There was 1 second, I think, left, and they had the kickoff left, but it felt like almost at the buzzer, the Montreal Alouettes were able to punch it in for a touchdown. I believe this was the Cole Speaker one, where he was able to catch it in the back of the end zone and give the Montreal, or cut into the BC Lions lead, getting it to 17-13 at half, and a little bit worrisome. Felt like the Montreal Alouettes were going to maybe double dip here. We'll get into what happened in the first play of the third quarter, but felt a little bit. You know what? This is uneasy. I thought about it a little bit after, but to start my feelings from the start of the first half to the end of the first half, or excuse me, the start of halftime to the end of halftime, were definitely far apart. I started halftime kind of a little bit uneasy after thinking a few things, kind of preparing for the show a little bit more. I thought, the Lions are in control of this game. If they can continue to do what they do, I think they'll be able to pull this one out still, even if Montreal is able to score on that first possession of the second half there. As I mentioned, the double dip scenario, getting the ball with the last possession of the first half and then getting the ball once again in the first possession of the second half and scoring on both those double dipping is huge, I think, in football. And if you're able to do that, I think adds into more. I think why coaches are able to have some confidence in deferring because they have that double dip option of getting that last possession of the first half and then scoring in the third quarter in some capacity. So Montreal, I think they were able to mention on the panel that they had 7 first downs on that last drive after the turnover, William Stanback turnover. They had 5 other in the entirety of the rest of the first half. So that's what kind of gave me a little bit more confidence. They had one good drive. Other than that, the Lions were doing phenomenal defensively to hold them to not much and limit them to really not too many big gains at all in the first half. So the Lions take the lead into the half, 17-13. And BC comes out kicking off to Montreal. They kick off the first play offensively for Montreal. Jonah Tavai on a little stunt off the edge, coming from his D tackle position, stunting off the edge. I think with Matthew Betts, if I'm not mistaken, a good call by if it's Ryan Phillips, if it's Coach John Bowman that's kind of orchestrating the defensive line there with the stunt call. Matthew Betts kind of almost, taking up 2 double teams from his defensive end position, slanting inside to take up the tackle and offensive guard. Jonah Tavai is able to stunt outside, loop around him, basically get a free pass to the quarterback in Cody Fajardo. And Fajardo tried to spin out of it. Tavai is able to come with his right hand and kind of punch out the ball. And I believe he had actually recovered the fumble as well. It was either him or Matthew Betts that were in the area and in the ones that were at the bottom of the pile there when the ball came loose. So great play for the BC Lions defense by Jonah Tavai. Just some more depth on the BC Lions. That's kind of been having to play here in the last few weeks with some of these injuries ramping up. I think of another one, Ryder Vargas, who's been maybe not up to the same level of play that we're used to, but has been playing quite well and giving us some valuable snaps when they're in there. Are they going to have some mistakes? Absolutely. There's still some young players, new players into some starting roles here, so they're going to have some growing pains, but I think they're also making their fair share of plays as well. So Jonah Tavai was able to have a nice impact play there to start the third quarter. BC was able to capitalize with a field goal drive, march on down the field, and punch it in or convert with a Sean White field goal for his second on the night, making it 22-13. BC Lions taking a 7-point victory. So I'm just going to catch up with a few of, I see Q-Man here. Yeah, Q-Man says, my view was it was a fumble coming out before backside was down. Yeah, I think I'm kind of like 50-50 on it, Q-Man. I honestly didn't have the greatest replay. I know, friend of the program, friend of mine, Jordan Savage on Twitter, mentioned that he didn't get a good replay. After I kind of saw the play happen, they go to the booth review. I thought it was a little bit too close to call. I didn't really get the greatest look as I was trying to jot down some notes. But if you thought you had a good view, I can't argue with that too much because obviously they had a good enough view that it was close enough where they had, it wasn't an egregious reversal of the call or anything like that. So definitely, don't have too much to fight back on if you thought it was a fumble. But he says tackling is good tonight through thought Montreal would kill us with hit screens. We were good forcing them east-west, not north, and using the sideline as a 13th man. I thought we were all right at tackling here. I think we would have saw some more hit screens if, KGG, Tyson Philpott, Matt Collins was in the lineup from Montreal, to be honest. But, I think of a few ones, TJ Lee missed a tackle there early on in the first quarter. Tackling was better, I think, tonight. I think it was, I don't know if I can agree with good. I think it was better because it's been a little bit of a hole, not even a little bit. It's been quite a big hole here in the last 6 weeks during the losing streak. And I think tonight was better. I think it was a step in the right direction, but I think there was still some room for improvement in terms of the tackling defensively. I think Ryder Varga missed a few, as I mentioned, with some of those growing pains. Ryder's been playing and giving some quality snaps, but I think of one play to the Ottawa Redblacks running back there last week, kind of missed him out of the backfield, and he was able to catch it and run for a big gain. There was another one, I think, tonight where Ryder Varga was in coverage and gave something up. So think it's going to happen with some of these younger players, but tackling was much better. I think it was a step in the right direction and something that they need to shore up down the stretch. And playing Montreal again, a healthy Montreal, playing a Winnipeg in the playoffs with guys like Brady Oliveira and guys like Nick Dembski and Kenny Lawler. That Kenny Lawler not so much. I know he doesn't like to try to extend too much. He usually tries to get down or get out of bounds. He's a slender, slighter frame. I know he's not afraid to mix it up in there from time to time. He'll drop his shoulder, but I think more often than not, you're going to expect some bigger, yak yardage and yards after the run from guys like Nick Dembski, Brady Oliveira, um, maybe Lucky Whitehead. We'll see what he's able to contribute here come playoff time for them. I think he's been a nice added piece, but he's definitely not the Lucky Whitehead that we're remember or we're in his prime or anything like that. So take back BC Lions here. Uh, third quarter. Shanti Evans, I thought, had been having himself I mentioned this in the preview on the weekly show with Blake. I thought he's been having himself a good season. He leads the team with 2 interceptions on the year, and had a nice breakup PBU. I thought he had a shot at excuse excuse me. I thought he had a shot at maybe picking the ball off and taking it in for six. Nonetheless, he was able to make a play, break up the pass, and BC was able to take over possession. And of course, drum roll, please. After we get a little bit of momentum there, sack to start the second half, field goal, get a stop defensively. They punt back to us. I'm thinking, okay, here we go. Let's go. Let's try to distance ourselves from Montreal, make sure that this isn't a closer game than it needs to be. Nathan Rourke has a uncharacteristic interception where he just throws totally behind. I think a would have been open to Alex Hollins. It would have been a tight throw towards the sideline, a little bit of an out pattern. That would have been a tough throw. But I think if he's on the money, that's a completed pass. He puts it behind him and it's intercepted. And Montreal has a little bit of life. They're able to drive down the field and capitalize. Um, and kick a field goal. And if it wasn't for actually Ronald Kent, they almost scored a touchdown on a seam pattern, maybe a skinny post down the seams, down the hashes. Ronald Kent came from his halfback position and was able to come over the top. It was actually a play that was challenged by head coach Jason Moss for pass interference. They ruled it as a bang bang play. I love that. Anytime you kind of slow down some of those situations, I'm sure 90% of those probably some of those plays look like pass interference if you slow them down and you don't see them at real speed, game speed. So glad that wasn't called pass interference. I thought Ronald Kent actually had himself quite a good game for a guy that's been out of the lineup, pressed back into a starting role here the last few weeks, and has risen to the occasion to play some pretty good football here the last couple games here. So Ronald Kent with a huge pass breakup that held the Montreal Alouettes to a field goal, and the Alouettes kicking the field goal went up 20-16. And then the Lions were able to, with a huge play by William Stanback, grab back momentum almost instantly at that point with a huge 38-yard run by William Stanback, taking it into the end zone. Was a BC Lions drive that was, couple completions there, a couple completions there by Nathan Rourke, was able to get into Montreal territory, and then William Stanback from just under 40 yards out was able to take the ball off the left side of the field on the offensive left side of the field, run up the sideline, able to kind of slightly cut back, put his foot in the ground, get elude some tacklers, break a couple tacklers, and then drag a body into the end zone, break the plane just enough, and get into the end zone for a 27-16 lead at that point, and just steal back all the momentum that Montreal had gained, cutting into a 4-point lead. BC able to go back up 11, not go back up 11, take the first 11-point lead of the game, and it was a nice sign for Stanback. As I was mentioning, the response to his earlier fumble could have very well gotten to a negative headspace, could have maybe piled on top, what's the word I'm looking for here? Could have kind of snowballed, I guess, is the word I'm looking for, or the analogy I'm looking for. Could have snowballed into something more negative if he stays in that headspace. he doesn't. He flips the switch, is able to capitalize and continue his impressive night, which we'll talk about here in the end. So William Stanback with a hell of an effort on his 38-yard touchdown run, giving the BC Lions a 27-16 lead. And BC was able to get a stop defensively, getting the ball back with an 11-point lead there late in the third quarter. Excuse me, guys. Long work week. It's Friday night, guys. I'm tired. I can't lie. I'm excited to get into bed here after this one. Check on the score of the Philly and Green Bay game. See who won that. If anybody's in the chat still, let me know who ended up taking that one. Would love to know. Looked like a good one, as well as some Canada West action. I'm interested to see who pulled off some of the results. I know Regina had kind of gotten out to an early lead. Saskatchewan came back with 3 straight touchdowns, had reclaimed the lead. UBC had been down, I think, 16 points when last time I checked. And then what was the other game in the Canada West here tonight? I believe Battle of Alberta, if not mistaken. And I think it was Calgary who had been up with an incredible 3 pick sixes in the first half of football there in Canada West action. So to get back into some BC Lions football here, the Lions were able to get back the football after a stop, after taking an 11-point lead there in the third quarter. They are driving there late in the fourth quarter, and BC's drive ended up getting halted with back-to-back sacks on Nathan Rourke. First one, don't remember off the top of my head. I know the second one more specifically was a David Neville just whiff or just a tough one. It almost looked like a turnstile type block where the defensive end really had no pushback or no kind of hindrance from getting to the quarterback. Was able to get to the quarterback, drag Nathan Rourke down on second and long, and force the Lions to punt, which was a tough one. But the Owls were able to take over possession there to start the fourth quarter. Converted on a third down. I think another gutsy play there by Jason Moss, which I kind of talked about a little bit with some friends of the show on social media. I allude and I definitely applaud Jason Moss for some of his decision making, and I guess kind of I'll go on a little bit of a rant here, but or I guess maybe I'll say that for another day. But and stick on Jason Moss. I thought Jason Moss, continued to play or continue to take gambles and take chances for his team, but in right situations. Start of half or end of half, could have kicked a field goal. Instead, they decide to go for the touchdown instead and throw for it. They get it there to start the half, or excuse me, to end the half with 1 second left. This one was another one where they go for third down, I believe. I think it was a 3rd and 2 from BC's maybe 20 or so yard line, and end up getting it going down to the 2 yard line. And on the first play, actually, Dominic Davis takes it around the left side. Looks like he's trying to be almost a little bit too cute and doesn't just try to get in there and tries to go a little bit too much east-west instead of trying to just get to the first sign of daylight and try to plunge into the end zone. Ryder Vargas is able to stand him up on first down, but able to punch it in on second down, cutting the lead to 27-22. The Montreal Alouettes failed on their 2-point conversion to try to cut it to a 3-point lead. That would have made it 27-24, which would have made things very interesting at that point. But the Lions were able to answer right away with a response drive in the fourth quarter. Big time throw down the middle that kind of put them into scoring position. To Javon Catoy was able to do his patented first down celebration. It was a huge play for the BC Lions there in the fourth quarter to kind of almost somewhat put things away to give them another first down there late in the fourth quarter. As I mentioned, put them into scoring position, and they were able to capitalize again on the second quarterback sneak of more than 15 yards out. This time, 18-yard quarterback sneak by Nathan Rourke. They said, David Mackey, stay outside. At that kind of the tight end up back position, needs you to block on this one. Nathan Rourke ends up taking it to the left side this time, and ends up kind of getting held up a little bit. Montreal doesn't wrap up. He's able to kind of break off to the left, and there's nobody there. He's able to take it in from 18 yards uncontested from that point on, and give the Lions a 37, the 34-22 victory at that point, and was super awesome. And the Montreal Alouettes, were able to take back over possession down 34 to, I believe, what was it, 23 or 22, excuse me, at that point. And BC was able to basically ice the game after this with a TJ Lee interception with a Christian coming in after, include him once again, was able to get a pressure on the play, was able to get the ball out of Fajardo's hands, I think quicker than he wanted to, tip pass up in the air. TJ Lee was able to, track it and come down with it and, ice away the game for the Lions. They end up kicking another field goal to make it 37-23 and get the big time victory for the BC Lions. So, not too much to talk about it, folks. We talked about it, quite a bit about it all. Nathan Rockets had a good game, 3 interceptions. Definitely would love to not have, 3 interceptions. That doesn't look great. That being said, I think 2 of them you can credit to, not all his fault. There was a few injury scares. Seontae Evans, I believe, left the game with an elbow injury. Gary Peters as well with an ankle injury, but we saw Gary Peters kind of being celebrating with TJ Lee after that interception in the fourth quarter. So perhaps a little bit of precautionary. I think they shifted Adrian Green out to corner. I don't know if it was, you know, Christophe Boyu or Charlie Ringland, who maybe slotted in at safety after that, but it was only for one more possession, the last possession, and they were able to get a turnover on it as well. So was a big one for the Lions. Hopefully those injuries are nothing more than some bumps and bruises, and those guys are able to heal up for a game that's a week from now. So a ton of time to heal up. They'll probably get and no travel next week as well. They'll probably get Saturday, Sunday off, maybe even Monday a little bit of a walkthrough type day, but Tuesday, Wednesday work days. Thursday a walkthrough. They play at home Friday, so should be a good opportunity for the Lions to rest some of those guys that maybe are dealing with some injuries. I know McInnes. We talked about it on the preview as well with me and Blake being there at Touchdown Pacific, seeing him around the locker room and stuff like that. Afterwards, he's definitely feeling it at this time of the season, and just hope that he's able to keep battling through, continuing to stay healthy. So we talked about it. Covington, Rourke. Who else has played well? I think William Stanback, I guess, is who we got to mention, is who we haven't mentioned. Let's go to his final numbers, who continues to have a phenomenal stretch here, and love to see the workload, the amount of carries he's getting, because I think you need, as a running back, a certain amount of carries to feel the game out, to get into a rhythm, and to feel your way through, the O-line, how they're blocking, the defensive line, how they're over pursuing, how they're staying in their run lanes, etc. So William Stanback, 20 carries on the night. Love to see it. Anything north of 15 is, I think, a great sweet spot for William Stanback and the BC Lions. 128 yards on 20 carries, 1 touchdown, and that is a 6.4 yards per carry, 38 yards long on the night. He also added 2 receptions for 28 yards as well. So what is that? 22 touches for a total of about 166 yards or so on the night. So another 150 plus performance from William Stanback coming out of the backfield. I think phenomenal added weapon addition by the BC Lions this offseason. And Q-Man mentioned earlier, I'll go back to the comment here. Nathan spreads the ball around. Eberhardt, Stanback, and Toy. Some of those underneath guys are going to be more involved here now with Nathan, because he's just so much in tune with the quick game, does his preparation in terms of, understanding what the defense is in, usually, pre-snap and stuff like that, understanding where to go, where they might be, a little bit more softer, stuff like that. So I think that's his game, and where he excels a little bit better than more quarterbacks around the CFL, not even just on his team. Just a phenomenal opportunity for, I think, those guys to excel. And I think you've seen Eberhardt start to be featured a little bit more here. Although he had got his number called quite a bit with VA at quarterback, even Dolagala as well, and just starting to be a little bit more. His usage has been up, I feel like, in the last few games, where he's been targeted a few more times. But other than that, a few guys other than that to point out, I don't think so. Offensive line, another one was Ronald Kent Perkins, excuse me, left the game with an injury. They had to shuffle the O-line around once again. Definitely a concern. Hopefully they're able to rest up, and Kent Perkins is able to be back. But if you're without your 2 starting tackles, that could be a tough task here down the stretch and for a few weeks. Hopefully, Darrell Broxton's able to maybe practice next week and get back into the lineup, and then you can slide David Neville maybe to the other side, whatever it may be. But Kent Perkins is going to be another one to keep an eye out, folks, here next week on the injury reports, all that sort of stuff as well. So, not much else to be said. I think if we're going to give out game balls here, got to be Stanback for me on that one. William Stanback, which is another phenomenal night. Could go to Nathan Rourke if he had a few more or a few of those less turnovers, although none of them were, I think, all his fault other than the last one. I thought he had still a pretty good night overall. So BC Lions also got added 4 sacks on the defensive line, which is a huge thing that helps out all sorts of the aspects of the defense, excuse me. Christian Covington with 1 sack. Sione Tamil with 1 sack. Thibaut Tabaye with 1 sack. And Jonah Tabai with 1 sack as well. So huge from the BC Lions defense for them to be getting contributions from those guys on the defensive line as well. And just an added bonus here that we've seen here in the last few games from the BC Lions. So not too sure what else to be said here tonight on the post-game recap show, folks. If you guys enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. We appreciate all the support so much. I believe we were at just under 250 subscribers on the YouTube channel, guys. So please head on over there right now. Subscribe, 248 as of right now. So please head on over, subscribe if you guys are watching on Instagram. Subscribe if you guys are watching on YouTube and are not. But follow as always on Instagram, Canadian Football Fanatics. Follow on Twitter @_CF Fanatics as well. And stay tuned, guys. We should be having a ton of good content here next week. Canada West Football Show. We will be joined by AK Gasama from the University of Manitoba Bisons next week. Canada or CFF Weekly Show. As always, you can expect a preview, BC Lions preview from Blake and I. Hopefully, Blake's available. And then a post-game recap. We will see how next week's schedule is going to work out with a home game, hoping to be over there in Vancouver at BC Place. So excited to see how the BC Lions respond from back-to-back wins, being back at home, a victory over the Montreal Alouettes. Huge opportunity for the BC Lions here now down the stretch to build on this momentum that they built. If they can get hot going into the playoffs, this is the exact right time to get hot going into the playoffs. Peaking at the right time is huge for the BC Lions, for any sports team, any sports league. And I think this might be the opportunity for the BC Lions. I was going to start the show by saying, guess who's back, my little Eminem cover. And I think the BC Lions back. I'm going to hold off from saying Nathan Rourke's back quite yet. I'm going to refrain. I was excited. I was telling Blake, I got my receipts. I'm ready. I got the clip loaded and ready to go. I'm going to wait. Nathan, threw 3 interceptions, not a perfect game, a good game. I'm waiting for that 400-yard game, that 4 or 5 touchdowns. I'm waiting for that one to start to dunk on people, where Kid Canada is back, baby, and I believe he is. Don't worry about that. The confidence is definitely high in him. Just waiting to be a little bit more boisterous. Don't want to get too cocky. Nobody is more humble than Nathan Rourke, so I feel like on part of his behalf, speaking for him, why be boisterous and why be kind of arrogant about it? Be humble about it. It's one win. It really hasn't done too much, because Winnipeg, Saskatchewan play tomorrow. If Saskatchewan's able to get a victory, I believe BC holds on to first place. If Winnipeg wins, they they stay in second. Excuse me, but we will see. It is still only September 6th, folks. So still a long way to go till playoffs. Still a long way to go till November 18th, I believe, is the Grey Cup date, which the Lions hope to play in. But overall, impressive last 2 weeks. I think the Lions are guess who's back, baby? The Lions are back. And I think they have a quarterback who's playing very well, who's playing some really good football here, and has another floor, I think, to kind of pass through and get to that ceiling. So super excited. Lions defense is starting to find their form here down the second half of the season, starting to add some meaningful contributions, which I think they're going to need to do. Can't really depend on that offense to carry them down the stretch and into the playoffs to put up 30 points every game. You're going to need your defense to hold that offense in the game sometimes, where you're just not feeling it offensively. So interested to see next week, man. I believe it's Toronto coming into town, Chad Kelly and Toronto. I think Toronto plays Ottawa this upcoming week. I think Ottawa's going to get a victory there. I picked Ottawa on the weekly show. We will see. That's why they play the game. So maybe Toronto's able to get a victory. But if Toronto's coming off back-to-back losses, they're going to be a very motivated team coming to BC play. So BC's going to have to be well prepared. Celebrate this victory here tonight. Really enjoy it. I think you guys are back on track, back to being Grey Cup contenders. That being said, still a lot of work to do in front of us. So that will do it for the post-game show here tonight, guys. Appreciate everybody for tuning in, and we will catch you guys on Wednesday on the weekly show.